Welcome to the Bandbox. I'm Kurt.
And I'm Connor. We're a father-son duo exploring masculinity across generations.
Each episode, we'll dig into the evolving roles, stereotypes, and pressures men navigate throughout their lives.
I just want to start by asking you, you posed the idea for this topic, and admittedly, I was like, what the frick is he talking about? Because you said farts, and then...
Right.
As if that wasn't something to grapple with and figure out what the hell do you mean. Then you said it should also be about Fight Club at the same time. So I feel like you have to explain yourself here because I've finally watched Fight Club for the first time. Tell me what you mean by this.
Well, no, I think first you should tell me what you think of the movie.
Oh, that's a good starting point. Okay, it was nothing like I thought it would be, and I guess spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen this movie, even though it's almost 30 years old, or yeah, almost 30 years old. It wasn't what I thought it was at all. I thought it was just like a fight movie, like literally just like some sort of like Patrick Swayze like Roadhouse thing, like just kind of like kicking ass and taking names kind of a movie. But there was a lot deeper subtext than I thought, just about like anti-consumerism, anarchism. What else stood out to me? Just sort of the split identity of Norton and Pitt, I thought was really interesting. Sort of the underground nature of like boys need to be boys, but they need to do it in sort of like this veiled underground way. And then the cherry on top is just kind of this whole like burn society down because we're not worth saving. Let's just start anew. And how that kind of developed in this like echo chamber of underground Fight Club, which is by a soap salesman. It was just, honestly, it was kind of like, it's a dark movie. Like there were definitely dark moments, but it's kind of comical in a way. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but that was my take on it.
It makes perfect sense. I'm just kind of surprised. I'm not necessarily surprised you hadn't seen it, but I am surprised you hadn't heard of it.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you just never. So you were not curious enough until we started mentioning it to check it out.
I guess not. This seems to be a theme. I like you would tell me you're like, oh, have you seen this? And I'm like, no, I haven't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of, talking about different generations, although you were born when it was made. I mean, you were on this earth. But obviously, you didn't know much about it. I thought it was a pretty crazy movie. And, back to, why I thought it might make sense to have an episode on this, it was just kind of guys being guys, and, nothing earth shattering. I mean, it's kind of still hysterical to me and sort of embarrassing that I still think, farts are funny. I mean, I should probably have, outlived or outgrown that kind of humor, but I mean, I haven't. I mean, I'm still just as, I don't know, lame as I was when I saw the movie or when I was younger. I mean, yeah, I probably shouldn't even say on this podcast how much I think farts are hysterical. I mean,
well, I think farts are funny too. I don't think you're alone in that. In fact, I'm going to out both of us here. I actually, in my Dropbox, I have a folder of mostly your farts, but some of my farts.
I just can't believe you just outed me like that.
Sorry.
No, that's
not
okay.
That serious. I mean, it's just flatulence. It's nothing terrible.
Right. So to me, it's like the episode about the F's, fighting, fornication, and farting. I don't know. Flatulence.
The three F's. Wow.
The three F's.
I haven't heard that before. I definitely think farts are funny too. And there's this clip I want to send you, but it's basically the South Park guys and one of their staff. It's like the behind the scenes thing about how they make an episode in like 6 days. And one of the staff writers, she was saying, in all the time that I've worked here, I've learned something, and it's that guys just find and farts hilarious, and it never like ends. and then they're like this is like the human centipede episode, so
Oh,
obviously I'll blurt that out, but I'll send you the clip so you can watch it. But I'm sure maybe you remember that, but that's basically
I've seen that episode. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. But that's
but
basically the gist of it. It's like there's a female writer on their staff and she's like, I don't know what it is, but guys just think farts are funny. And
well, okay, let's ask the question. So do women and girls not think farts are funny, or
I think they're fun. Oh, well, I mean, Lindsay thinks my farts are funny.
oh, okay. So she laughs at your farts.
Yeah. Does mom
But
laugh at your farts?
But yeah, I think so. I guess.
I'm making you so uncomfortable right now.
Oh no, I think she enjoys a good fart.
Yeah.
But and I really can't out your mother about what she does to me. I really shouldn't say that
Don't go there, bub.
Yeah, no, I'll be in deep trouble. But yeah, like so it's definitely like significantly more funny to guys, right?
I think we can agree that, yeah. I wish we had a guest this week to come in here to corroborate that, but I think generally farts are more funny to guys. Especially like if you're just hanging with the bros, like you might just have met, like, yo, dude, like let's go for a drink after work or whatever, and then you might end up farting in front of each other by the end of the night. You never know.
So that's
But,
like
like,
a bond. That's a bonding event.
I think so. I mean, not everyone's the same, right? I don't want to generalize and say every single guy likes farts or thinks that they're funny, but in my experience, since I was like very young and like kindergarten, like farts have always been funny to me and my friends.
Well, and so is there a taboo? I mean, like, and why? Why would that be taboo? I mean, yeah, I guess it's kind of gross. But why is it taboo, or is it just like, what is that? Like, why does it matter?
I mean, okay, it's definitely taboo because it's a bodily function, right? I mean, you're excreting, right? It's like, that's kind of gross. You don't want to like go into a restaurant and be ripping wet ones while you're having a nice Italian dinner, right?
Wet ones. Okay. Oh my God.
I mean, there's a whole etymology to naming farts here. I'm sure you can attest.
Oh, listen, I'm all down for that. But
you're all down for it. But my point being is it's a bodily function, and obviously you know there is some taboo to that for good reason, right? You know, if we all went around farting, it would probably not smell too good, but also it'd be kind of offensive, and like we couldn't even have moments of silence to honor the dead without a fart, right? So like very clearly, there's a reason why we shouldn't be farting. Like there's moments where we need to have clarity. So I do agree with you. It's definitely taboo. But what is it? Like, were farts a thing with your guy friends when you were my age?
Oh, 100%. And they're still that way. I mean, I was hanging out with my friends not that long ago, and it was like, we were at a tailgate at a football game, and, it's like, you're old and you're doing that and you're going, it's just like...
like cavemen.
Yeah. You could probably still barely walk, as long as you can still hear, and see, I guess farts are going to be funny. But yeah, I don't totally understand it, but I can't deny it. I can't deny it.
You're onto something, and I want to start to bring us in the direction of Fight Club. So it's only under certain circumstances that farts are funny, right? It's like you're in like a tight knit group of friends, or like maybe you're like in sort of a more quiet area, or like it's like you're hanging at a friend's house. It's not like you're doing this in public. At least I don't think so. At least not for me, but I mean, I've definitely farted in public when I thought it was going to be silent, but typically I try to constrain that to the home or like somewhere where I know I'm not
Right.
going to like embarrass myself.
True. Well, okay, so here's kind of an interesting thing. So I was out of town this past week, and I was giving a talk with a colleague, and my colleague was in the middle of her presentation, and some dude at the back just ripped like the loudest fart, and I didn't even want to look at my colleague because I knew if I did, I would lose it, literally lose it. And so I managed not to make eye contact. But I almost like was like questioning myself, like, did that happen just now? And it is like it's really inappropriate. But it's also hysterical, at the same time. I even posted about it in our work Slack channel, and everyone else was laughing about it too. So I didn't describe it in a really gross way. I think I called it flagellation in the chat at work, but everybody thought it was hysterical. Males, females,
Yeah.
everybody thought it was funny. But not in the moment. In the moment it was like mortifying. But yeah, and maybe that's the segue to Fight Club. There's so many things in that movie that like are, I don't know, wrong, but it's almost like he walks right through. The characters walk right through that like there are these norms, and then they basically just kind of walk all over the norms. So I don't know what your pivot was to Fight Club about how it relates to farts, but we should totally talk about that.
I'm trying to not laugh every time, but it's just really hard not to.
Yeah, even the word.
Yeah, fart or gas. It's just always just like a funny. Anyway, no, I mean, I think the pivot for me is in a large social group, there are things that are not permitted, but like in a smaller cohort, there are things that are permitted, and that's kind of an element of this movie, right? Is having an underground fight club is not permissible just on the street. So they turn inwards to, I think it's below a bar. It's a bar basement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's kind of the equivalent of like going to your friend's sleepover to fart and not like in the school gym. Right.
Right. Right.
And so it's interesting that out of that sort of bubble, to continue the fart imagery here, this bubble that Pitt and Norton and all these other men in this fight club are in, is that's how this sort of anarchic movement sort of blossoms. And I can't help but just think, this is sort of an aside for a second, but I can't also think back about like echo chambers and being in like a communication bubble, and just how the internet forces us into these underground bubbles in a similar way. And, on the one hand, that can be a bad thing, but on the other hand, sort of these smaller breakout groups can actually be good, I would argue, for male socializing, right? You sort of find a group that you identify with. It doesn't have to be over farts or fighting. Those are obviously not the best of things in certain circumstances.
Right.
But let's say you relate over a sport or like a reading group or whatever, some sort of activity, right? That's constructive. Like maybe these underground basements of participation are important. That's all I have.
Yeah. I think, the movie has, there's a tone about it that's kind of unserious, but then of course they're dealing with pretty serious things. And so, trying to, earn a living and be a good worker, and then starts kind of violating some of those norms, and then, just kind of goes off the rails. But, not to say that this movie was made with any of this kind of these ideas in mind. I'm just sort of thinking about how it, some of the messages, at least to me, are how sometimes males connect. whether it's about farts or fighting or whatever. And there seemed to be this kind of, I don't know, camaraderie or this loyalty to one another, even if you were incredibly different. I mean, that's the one thing that kind of struck me is you had all different types of guys that kind of centered and organized around these key principles, and they were, on the surface they were quite different, yet they kind of all aligned on certain things that they found to be almost like sacred. And so, I don't know how you felt when you watched it, and it's been a while since I first watched it, and I watched it again, and I'm trying to remember kind of how I felt about it the first time I saw it versus when I just watched it about a week ago when we first started mentioning the movie. And the one thing that kind of stuck out to me was, I don't know, just somebody feeling like they live a meaningless life. The character Ed Norton, I can't remember his name in the movie, but
I don't think he was
sort of-
named. It was just like narrator, right?
Oh, no kidding.
Pitt was Tyler Durden,
Right.
and then the narrator is just unnamed, and then you eventually learn that they're the same person.
Right. Right.
So I think he's
And-
unnamed. Yeah, just Ed Norton. Yeah.
So, the very beginning of the movie where he kind of he gets his identity through, his condominium. He goes shopping at IKEA and he has the latest couch, that's popular, and he has the right silverware, the right plateware, and all this stuff. And then he comes back home from one of his trips and everything explodes and it just becomes kind of irrelevant. And then he lives in this dilapidated, gross, place with this Tyler guy. Just, it does kind of strike me that, are people kind of in the pursuit of something that's inherently empty. It's not really anything of substance to it. Was kind of what I was thinking. And so in other words, they found almost like connection and brotherhood despite some of the other things that were so, different about them. That's kind of what struck me, just even from an emotional standpoint. I was thinking, I didn't really, did you anticipate that they were actually the same person? Did that occur to you at any point?
Not at all.
So
I mean,
you didn't
I
figure,
probably
you
should have
didn't-
thought that no, not until the big reveal.
Okay, because I didn't either. I didn't figure it out necessarily. I mean, when I watched it the second time, I could see some of the kind of hints that came out. But again, what does that say? Like, we have these alter egos that I don't know, need to come out somehow, and if we don't, what are the consequences? That kind of thing. So anyway, I'm just curious. So that's kind of how I felt about it. How did you feel about it when you watched it?
I felt, this is going to sound strange, but like validated. I don't know what the cultural climate was in the late 90s, but it feels similar to today, where people are
Oh.
kind of fed up with like the state of things just being awful all the time, and just, why don't we just remove ourselves from this current system and then just reset or do our own thing, or just kind of take a step back. And like, there's a huge movement with younger generations to retreat from technology, right? Gen Z loves film photography, and iPods are coming back into style, like the old school iPods, and sort of retreating from the sort of mass consumerism that we've been living with for years now. It seems like a similar moment, and I can't help but think similar thoughts, right? Like, I need to retreat from like all the consumerism. It's overwhelming. So, and in that regard, that's how it made me feel in one way. In another way, I think it also made me feel like, well, I guess it like made me question, like, am I the same way? Like, am I defining my identity but by what I buy and what I wear and like what I consume or what I put in our apartment? Like, am I really my own person, or am I defined by the things that I acquire or obtain?
Right.
Um, it was a pretty deep movie, but it also made me think about like my own social groups and my own friend groups. Like, what do we relate over? Do we relate over these really, arguably important things like consumerism, anti-consumerism, human rights, justice, advocacy, like those sorts of things? Like, what are we relating with people about these days?
Right.
And sort of
Right.
stuff, that sort of stuff. We talked, I think, a little bit about um, like where do men find or distill meaning from in this day and age? It's kind of it feels like a similar um, theme to today and to what things are going on, I guess.
Yeah, I guess now that you talk about it that way, a couple of things kind of struck me about what you said. Like what really matters, and the one thing that occurred to me watching the movie was his relationships were really shallow, really superficial, and we later learn, of course, they're the same person. That made me wonder just the way that woman in the movie. I don't remember her name or her character. She's kind of the on again, off again girlfriend of. We turns out to be the same person, but
Oh,
in the
Helena
movie,
Bottom Carter. I don't remember her character's name, but I think it's Helena Bottom Carter, right?
uh, I think I'll just have to take your word for it.
Okay.
I don't. She was in a couple of movies I've seen over the years, but I don't know her name.
Hmm.
But I felt really pretty bad for her, and it felt like she was being badly mistreated, but it's like she was still coming back for more mistreatment, it seemed. So that was a weird twist for me, because I don't think I remember reacting to that part of the movie, but I did this time because it just felt so. His the lead character's kind of relationship struck me as not good and not connected, and very adversarial relationship with his boss, and he becomes pretty defiant and increasingly difficult to work with that company. And but then again, even this relationship with his dissociated self didn't seem particularly good either. So it made me wonder, okay, so if this is two aspects of the same personality, they didn't even seem to jive very well, and so I'm just wondering, that felt disjointed to me too. So I think it was just a really almost like a dystopian kind of movie about the failure of humanity through the eyes of desperate men, is what it seemed like to me. And I think at the very end, I'm trying to remember the very end. It was sort of just like this Project Mayhem will continue was kind of the conclusion, right? I mean, they were just kind of like, and so I'm like, okay, I'm not saying that movies always have a moral to the story or whatever, but whatever it was, it didn't feel terribly optimistic.
Yeah. No, and I was just going to ask you as a follow-up, like, what was I must have been 3 years old when this came out. What was the cultural reception of this movie at the time, if you remember?
Oh, it was an instant, like, cult classic. Like, everybody loved it. And, this really helped really put both actors into the stratosphere. I mean, obviously Brad Pitt was already pretty well known, but I think it literally put Ed Norton into a different category. Really elevated his career, and I think he did a masterful job. I thought it was a brilliant piece of acting. And maybe there wasn't a moral to the story. Maybe it was like, this is us. This is, which is kind of sad if that's a statement on malehood. That
Maybe.
doesn't sound good to me.
I mean, well, hold on there, cowboy. I think we talk about this sort of the pressures and constraints of this man box, right? Sort of
Right.
the three P's: provider, protector, procreator. Sort of boxing men into what they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to act, how they're supposed to interface with society, and it seems like in this movie, the one of the central struggles is how do men interface with society, and so in sort of a similar way, instead of maybe these guys should have been farting with each other. Maybe that would have helped diffuse all of this sort of uncertainty and pressure. Maybe it should have been Fart Club instead of Fight Club. Because what happened is they took all the rigidity and the constraints of society and they turned inward, and it became violent, and it became an anarchistic what's the word, anarchy movement. It became an anarchy movement. I don't know the words. I'm not, but I think there's something to dig into there. The messages, maybe the messages. There are better ways to handle the constraints of society than, as opposed to just doubling down on the constraints and like, oh, okay, like, well, we're men, and so how do we solve things as men? We solve it with violence, and we solve it with upheaval or revolution or a global movement to disrupt the power order. Maybe that's the solution. I mean, history has told us time and time again, revolutions spur new political movements and sort of things like that. But also maybe the message is, this is what happens when men are expected to be totally serious and closed off and not talk to each other and not laugh about their farts.
No, I actually love where you went with that. That's brilliant. And I think, yeah, excellent points. I mean, and remember, okay, I kind of forgot this until you just were talking. Remember, this is, basically the underclass. Remember how a lot of the messaging was the waiters and the servers and the blue collar people doing the work for the rich and famous, basically. So
right.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something. And so, yeah, I like how you said that. Hold on there, cowboy. That was awesome. Yeah, no, I like that. And I think that's probably maybe a possible message. Maybe that's actually what it really says. Maybe we should fart more than fight, or maybe we can do both, or, but I love that we have to find ways to connect. And I will say this, I think there was a part that I did relate to. I know that this, like when I was big into sports and I played, ice hockey, that's a pretty rough sport. But there's something, I don't know, different about like, bleeding together for a single cause. There is something about that,
Yeah.
that I think is really kind of important and kind of cool. And I can't necessarily fully describe it. I just know that, this kind of connection that I sometimes have with a lot of my male friends, it does have that element to it that's a little bit rough around the edges. But I think that feels consistent to me. I don't know.
No, it's the same. I think there's some sort of primal thing that guys tap into when they're hanging out. Like, I know biologically humans are hunter-gatherers historically, and like we would provide for the tribe or whatever, and like
Right.
the guys would do the hunting or whatever. I don't know. I didn't study cavemen. I'm just throwing stuff out here. But I guess my point is, like, there is that urge for sort of that primal like physicality and doing something not violent per se, but sort of aggressive. I mean, like I could like point to football as like a team sport, or kickball, or like all these sports that involve like physicality. I think that's important for male development, but at the
Right.
same time, that's like I feel like we put too much emphasis on that. Like that's not the only thing. There are other things here,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I don't know what your experience was like in the school system, but my experience like in the public school system is like, and this applies to girls too. The school system beats non-compliance and sort of diversity out of you. It's designed to standardize, homogenize. Everyone's measured to the same metrics, the same test metrics. Um,
Yep.
you're supposed to be compliant, adhere to the same schedule every day, and sort of stepping out of the line or thinking out of the box, no pun intended, is frowned upon or frankly even punished. And so I can't say that I'm surprised that men end up, young men and older men end up in positions where they put themselves in a box or they back themselves into a corner. Um, and then they don't know how to interface with the world or society. It's
Right.
not surprising to me. I don't know what it was your experience in school.
Pretty consistent. I mean, I know that, like you said, I had a college professor say this one time when I was an undergrad, and it still kind of sticks with me. He said the whole purpose of school is behavior modification.
Wow.
And
Was this a
essentially,
was this a psych professor or?
there's a psych professor who
Okay.
studied with some of the world's most well-known behavioral psychologists. That was his background, is behaviorism. And so it's not surprising that he would describe it as behavior modification. But I think his point, as he kind of said more, was it's to make sure people are basically the same. It's like they end up doing the same things. Your word was homogenize. I don't think that's wrong. I think that's probably the way school felt to me. In fact, I don't know if I've told you this story, but you know that I'm left-handed. In fact, I'm kind of both-handed, weirdly. And when I was young, when I had a natural tendency to use my left hand when I was writing, my teachers actually tried to correct me and make me right-handed.
Are you serious?
And yeah, and that was not that uncommon. That even desks back then were designed for right-handers. Golf courses are designed for right-handers. There's a lot of things in life that basically caters to right-handed people. And so again, the odds of being left-handed are like 1 in 10. So and that's still true. And there's a genetic component to it for sure. But again, it's like conformity, it's compliance, it's doing what you're expected to do, including trying to strong arm a little boy, me, when I'm in first grade, to not be left-handed, And I don't remember it being bad. I think what ended up happening weirdly is that I end up doing kind of half things in my left hand and half of the things with my right hand. So I can't really explain why that is.
Do you
But,
remember how you felt about it? Like, do you remember in that like first grade, Kurt, like how you felt about that? Like being told like this is wrong, even though it felt natural?
Well, I felt singled out, and it felt kind of embarrassing. I mean, because I remember my teacher would come over and like grab the pencil out of my left hand and like shove it in my right hand and say, "No, Kurt, the way you do it is this way," and that didn't feel great, But what am I going to say? No, I refuse.
Yeah, like you're 7 years old at this point. What are you gonna say
Right.
to an authority
Yeah.
figure? Oh my God, dude.
Well, and then I guess maybe they stopped forcing me because eventually, again, my natural tendency was to kind of drift back to my left hand while writing. Although, again, even when I'm like back in the day when I would do college teaching, I'd have chalk in both hands, and depending on where I was standing in the classroom, I actually wrote better with my right hand than my left hand on the chalkboard.
Is it because you wouldn't smudge it as you went by, or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of weird, but anyway, so you asked me how I felt in school. So I think I felt like I had to conform, you know. We used to have recess, and you'd have to line up, and so if you didn't do it the way you were expected, you got punished for it. So whatever you did that was not like what the rules said or whatever, the whole thing back to my professor in college was, it's to modify my behavior to be in line with everybody else's. So that, again, that's all I knew. So I don't know that I would have thought that it was bad. It just felt like, okay, well, I guess that's the deal, you know?
Yeah. Well, and so I'm ready to really ramp this up because I've got a story I'm sure you remember, but first I'll just say, how can we as a society be surprised when men act a certain way when we've put them into this box and defined what they are so critically and so specifically for years? Like, how can we be surprised when, like, that's how they act? It's not surprising at all to me. And so let me just share a story that I think you probably remember. I was in 6th grade, so it would have been 5 years older than you were at the time of your story. But I do they do DARE training anymore? Is that like a thing in school systems these days?
I hope not. I mean, it's been shown not to work. In fact, it's been shown to make things worse. So I'm gonna say hopefully not.
Hopefully not. And what is DARE for people who don't know?
Drug abuse resistance education.
And who performs this education?
It would be the popo.
The popo, like, what does that mean? Police?
Police, yeah.
The police. All right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, like, a cop will come into a school setting and then talk about how drugs are bad, okay, or something like that.
Tried to scare you straight. That's right.
Tried to scare you straight. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm sure you know where I'm going with this, but I was in DARE in 6th grade, and let me back up and provide a little backstory. So you and Mom have always been supportive of Olivia and I being expressive with ourselves and our identities and stuff. And so I had my ear pierced for one of my ear pierced. I have both ears pierced now in different positions, but I had one of my ears pierced since 1st grade. And it was never an issue. You know, I'd hear the occasional comment like, "Oh, that's gay," or like the F word, not the FUCK word, but the other one.
Right.
Nothing major, just, the normal people being phobic. Never really affected me that much. But there was an instance where I was in DARE class with our DARE officer, and he called me gay in front of the entire class of like 30 kids. And not that being gay is wrong or anything. That's aside from the point, but he chose to single me out in a group of my peers over something about my appearance, and thought that was totally fine because it wasn't normative to what his idea of the world was. So he took his own enslaving man box and then imposed it on me. And luckily, in the aftermath of that, you and Mom kind of went nuclear and like went to the school and was like, "This is not okay.
Right.
Like, you all need to deal with this." And so he apologized to me. I'm sure he didn't mean it. He just was apologizing because he had to save his job. Yeah. But the bottom line is, I was grateful to have you guys there to back me up, because I'm envisioning in an alternate universe where there's the other version of me with a different set of parents who didn't get the support to back me up. And then I retreated inward and then learned from that experience, oh, if I'm different or I appear differently or I act not heteronormatively or if I act like in a non-masculine manner or a non-traditionally masculine manner, that it's not okay, and that I need to back off of that. And maybe I would have turned inward and been a completely different person than I am today in a negative way. And then I could have continued to perpetuate that cycle of abuse to future generations. So to me, these two experiences that we had are not that different. It's taking some aspect about your personality that's harmless, right? And then saying this is wrong, and then sort of outing you in a class environment, which when you're a kid, like that's like the most important thing in the world, is like how you are in relation to your peers. And then these people just like kind of spit in our faces in a way.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. No, I don't think I've ever heard you tell that story as an adult. Does it still in any way affect you now, or do you still think about it? Other than when we're talking about it now, I mean, can you say whether it's impacted you in some way that you haven't discussed?
I really think you guys saved me. Like I said, I think about that instance. You know, obviously it was very embarrassing in the moment, and it did make me want to take out my earring and sort of retreat. So I think I did carry that with me for a while in the years thereafter, but you know, I'm almost 30 now, like I'm well into my adulthood now. And I think about that often, but I think of it in the context of, oh my God, there are probably so many poor children, boys and girls, who get assailed by, supposed role models for their individuality, and there are kids turning inward and becoming antisocial because of adults doing this completely unnecessary BS. And that makes me sad. So I do think of that a lot.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you telling that story, because I definitely remember it from my perspective, kind of how it was for us as parents. You know, we were pretty angry. I'd say mortified, actually. And, I know that we were lucky too, because the people that we went to talk to were supportive. And so, you remember your principal at that school, her name was Mary, listened to your mom and me. I imagine even a difference would have been if they didn't even insist that this police officer apologized to you. Because I remember I sat in the room with you when the cop apologized. And again, I was kind of surprised they did that. I didn't think that would even happen, but you don't really fully grasp how vulnerable people are when they're young.
Yes.
That could have worked out so much differently. That's a really good story to think about, and how, if you imagine, I don't know, a person that goes through their young life, since we're talking about, this is the, Man Box Pod, like a young man or a boy kind of going through school and experiencing all kinds of adversities or issues, not being supported, not being heard, not being listened to. Imagine, if you just kind of turn up the volume and turn up the intensity and the frequency of these kinds of events, you can imagine just how difficult a person's life can be. And you're right. I mean, it makes me think, if we just have, I don't know, just not very many examples of how we can raise our young people more flexibly and compassionately, we would probably do a lot of things that would prevent some of the things that we now currently see. It makes me think, that we could, if we just spent a lot more time, setting the conditions more effectively for young men, I think we'd probably be in a different situation now.
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah. And well, it's like it really like the only thing that really bothers me about that, like I've moved on for the most part, but like the one thing that I can't get out of my head is like that it was a sworn police officer who thought it was okay
Right.
to single out a kid.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's like it's one thing if it was like someone's older brother called me gay or whatever in passing, but this was like a cop that was there to do supposed good, and then just how could you, someone who's entrusted by the public to protect and serve, like how did that statement protect and serve anyone?
Right. Well, geez, if we could really, we could have an entire season of shows about hypocrisy among law enforcement. I would suspect, and what you don't know as part of the story, like I know additional things about that particular police officer that would would make you cringe if you knew like the whole story about that guy.
Yikes.
He was pretty awful. He's a pretty awful person. So yeah, he whatever he what his sworn duty was didn't really have an effect on his actual behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and like that makes me think like, okay, if a cop can do something like that, imagine what someone who's not a public servant might
Right.
do to perpetuate this man box, or to be violent, or to bring violence into a school setting, or it's just, if that was the bar when I was that age for like, okay, like that's, at least in his mind, he thought that was permissible. Like imagine
right.
what the lowest rung of behavior would have been.
No, those
It's-
are really great questions. Yeah, those are
Yeah.
great
So,
questions.
which gets me back to a question I wanted to ask you. Like, did you? I mean, you and Mom would fight so hard for Olivia and I. Like, if anything ever happened to us, like, did you have that? Did you feel like you had that support when you were young?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. No, I think, and I'm not going to throw shade at my parents. I think they did the best they could, honestly. I just don't think they were at a place where they could prioritize raising children. I think there were just so many things happening, and I think it's okay to say, my parents got divorced when I was pretty young, and I definitely remember, wanting my dad to stay. He ended up leaving, and I tried to convince him to stay. I was 6 years old, and I still remember trying to convince him to stay. And they just had a whole series of difficulties that I think probably just prevented them from being attentive parents. They just weren't. I feel in many ways I mostly kind of raised myself on, and I know that sounds kind of, I'm not trying to boo-hoo about it. Like I don't regret my childhood at all. I mean, I definitely had my things I had to struggle with. And again, I'm not saying they completely 100% abandoned me, but they were not, they were not clocked in most of the time. My dad worked all the time.
Yeah, it didn't seem like a lot of parents in your generation did. Anyway, it seemed like being a parent, like to a kid your age, was like, oh, okay, like I'm here for the contraception, or not the contraception. I'm there for the, wow, holy Freudian slip. I'm there for the conception and like wiping your ass and like putting food in your mouth. But aside from that, it's like you figure it the hell out kind of thing.
Well, and quite honestly, when I was a teenager, that felt like freedom to me. So I'm not, that's why I'm not complaining. Like,
no.
Basically what I'm saying is I raised myself with my friends. Like they helped raise me. And, we learned oftentimes the hard way. We would do a lot of experimenting with a lot of different things and dangerous things and, things that we probably shouldn't have done. And, but we learned. I mean, that's kind of the thing about my childhood is it was like a childhood full of experimentation.
Yeah.
Can you jump your bike over this ditch that's, I don't know, 10 feet wide? And then we learned pretty quickly, when you're a seventh grader, you generally can't do that. The physics don't work. So you break bones, and you learn again the hard way, on playing ice hockey on a golf course on a pond, not wearing any kind of protection whatsoever, causes pain. And again, it was super fun, but we again learned from each other. And so, I'm not complaining. I just think that, there are so many different things that challenge young people today, your age, and when you were younger, obviously, and even now, that I don't think in my generation we had to worry about as much. Because I do think that, I wouldn't trade positions with your generation. And, again, it might be because I wasn't raised in conditions like you were, but those conditions. You might look at my generation and say, I'd never want to be in those circumstances, or have parents that were kind of, I guess the term would be latchkey kids, where basically you let yourself into your own house after school, you get yourself to and fro, you just take care of stuff, right? But I do think that today's sort of situation with young men, it actually feels harder to me to be like your age or younger. But how do you react to that kind of thing?
Well, it's funny, like, not to drag a whole nother movie into this, but have you seen The Matrix, the original
Oh yeah,
Matrix?
for sure.
Okay, so it's like another late 90s movie that came out sort of around the same time Fight Club, if not the same year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
One thing that strikes me about that movie is just how siloed all of the people are in terms of socializing. Like, you meet Neo, Keanu Reeves, and he doesn't really interact with anyone in his day-to-day life. He's just sort of kind of going through the motions in a similar way that Ed Norton is. And we're in a similar time. It's very easy in the current environment for young men to just sit in their silos. You just go to work, go to the gym, try to make content so that you can monetize or have a platform or whatever. Maybe not date, maybe kind of date, but you're not feeling like you're quite in that space. You also, everything is comparative and judgmental now. So like you're everything. Here's my theory. Here's my grand conspiracy theory. I think everything has been so commodified that we everything is a comparison now. It's no longer how can I relate to you as a peer, man to man. It's what can I get from you? What is of value out of my relationship with you?
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, like, man to man interactions feel very transactional these days. Like I remember my early childhood, elementary school, middle school, even some of high school, like having deep, like meaningful friendships. But nowadays, like all of my male friends, it's like you can kind of feel this tension of like, okay, are we sizing each other up to see what we can get from each other? Whether it be like cross promotion for work, or like, am I just staying in touch with you so I can get something from you later? And then you start to get up in your head, well, like no one's really talking to me unless they can get something from me. And then you say, well, that's it. I'm going to withdraw.
Right.
I'm generalizing a lot right now, but that's kind of how it feels, right? Like nothing feels innocent. Nothing feels playful. Nothing really feels sort of, I'm Christian, to borrow from the Christian faith, like offering without expectation of anything in return. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of that in society these days. And, I do wonder, like, I don't think I would trade places with you just because of like the air quality thing. your air quality was complete crap. So no offense to your, your Chevelle SS Chevy, like gas guzzling 8 miles to the gallon thing. I mean, they sound cool, but like I like the air quality these days. But I do wonder, like, would I be happier? Would I have more friends if there weren't screens and like monetization and prediction markets everywhere?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. Yeah, that's pretty intense. And actually, going back to what you first started talking about, the Matrix, and I try to think about the Matrix and Fight Club around in the same kind of vein. And it is kind of similar in the sense that it's like males making decisions.
Yeah.
Remember the red pill, the blue pill, and of course,
I didn't
Fight Club is.
I didn't even realize I just referenced, that's literally like a root reference for the manosphere. So I didn't even mean to do that, but it's interesting
Yeah.
that, we're picking sort of the sister movie as sort of a comparison to that
Right.
in a way. Wow,
No,
that's a good point. Continue.
I think
Sorry.
I just think there's some important analogies. To me, when I think about the Matrix, I honestly kind of think about it as like a fork in the road, like that you need to make some decisions, and it feels like even in Fight Club, it's a series of consequential decisions. And like what do you want to be, what do you want to do, how do you want to be known, how do you want to be seen? So to me, I think there's some pretty interesting analogies that strike me and that are relevant today. Like, how do you decide whether there's a friendship that's worth investing in? I think we talked about maybe on a previous pod, or I'm remembering a conversation with you about one of my friends that made some decisions that led me to decide that I can no longer be a friend to him. And so again, we're always making decisions, and so I think what I would hope this pod even helps folks do is to make good decisions, and decide what kind of life you want to have, what kind of relationships do you want to value. And these movies that we're referencing, they're old, but they kind of speak to the importance of making good decisions. Like even that cop that said that outrageous thing to you when you said you were in sixth grade when that happened.
Yeah.
So like, it makes me wonder, like, what in the world would somebody be thinking to make a statement like that to a sixth grader? Like, what screws have to be loose for you to say something that disgusting?
I mean, it would have to be unconscious thought. That's the only thing I can square in my head, is like, he must have just let his mouth run.
Yeah.
So back to your point, I think like conscious thought is very important these days, because everything is sort of training or conditioning us to have unconscious impulse, right? Even like scrolling on the phone, it's designed to just keep you unconsciously engaged, right? But like taking ownership of your life and of what you want and how you want to treat people and how you want to present into the world, I think that's like the highest form of masculinity and like breaking out of this box. And again, I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about, it doesn't have to apply exclusively to men or male identifying people. Like this is universal.
Right. No, I think that's a really great kind of angle to take as we kind of, I don't know if we're nearing the end of today, but it just strikes me that if I could name one thing that might be one of the most important, I don't know, skills or assets that I feel like you and I have, it's basically the capacity to make decisions. And what are you going to decide? And every day, we probably make maybe thousands of decisions every single day. Obviously some more consequential than others, but to me, if we can really lean into this notion that we want people to take full responsibility for themselves and their own decisions, including who they want to be friends with, who they want to interact with, who they, want to get their information from, that kind of thing.
Consequently, who not to get the information from.
Right.
And I think, just before you continue, interesting point, Ed Norton and Keanu Reeves are sort of letting their lives pass by in both of these movies. When we're first introduced to them, it's kind of just like life is happening to them. They're not really active participants, I would argue.
Yeah. No, that's such a cool coincidence that we kind of came to this conclusion kind of randomly, or maybe not so randomly, but I think that that's a really good point. And I didn't really have anything else to say that was worth saying, so feel free to continue your thought.
I think lead with intentionality and goof off and fart a little more. That's what. Connor out. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I can't say something better than that. I think we have to leave it there.
Fair enough.
Thanks for listening to The Man Box. If today's conversation resonated with you, share it with someone you care about.
If you like the show, make sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Man Box is not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. If you're struggling, please seek help by calling or texting 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. We'll see you next time.